Hello, I'm Nathan Fullerton. I'm an Apple Certified Final Cut trainer operating out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. To learn more about me, go to www.nathanfullerton.com. The reason I'm here today is that several people have asked me how I added a border onto keyed footage within Final Cut Pro. So, I'm going to tell you how to do it. The first thing we do is start off with some good keyed footage. I've got some green screen footage here that was shot as part of The Zombie Opera, which was a combination film and stage show put on here in Pittsburgh this year that I worked on. In particular, at the moment, the newscaster has just fought off a horde of zombies and is telling the world about the status of the zombie invasion. Now, in order to make this thing work, the big trick occurs down here on track V2. So let's take a look at that. When we open up V2 in the viewer, basically it's just a big color blob. It's a color blob that's a couple of pixels bigger than the keyed footage. How did we make that happen? If I go to the Filters tab here, in the Filters tab, you can see that I chose to use the color key instead of Primat RT. You have to use a keying filter that will let you invert the alpha channel created for the key. Primat RT doesn't let you do that, so we have to use the more simple color key here. It's okay that it doesn't give us a perfect key. We're just looking to create a color blob. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to pass through shadows or anything funky like that. It just needs to create a basic blob. Then, if you take a look down here, we added some matte magic filters. Now, the matte magic filters allow us to actually shrink the keyed area. Now, you might say, shrink? Why are we shrinking? We want to grow it. Exactly. It's kind of counterintuitive, but remember, we're shrinking the inverted key. So we're actually growing the final key because our next step is to add a channel inverter onto it. So that's our next filter down there in the list, the channel inverter. And we're going to invert the alpha channel on this. Then after that, we're going to do some levels adjustment and add a tint to it, just to make it the colors that we want it to be. Then we pop the V3 track over the top of everything and it looks pretty slick. So let's actually take this thing step by step and build this from scratch, okay? First things first, I like to put on the funky background right away. If you use just plain old black as your background, you can actually be fooled. Sometimes you're seeing black on black and you can't actually tell what's working and what isn't. So I like to put that funky background in there first to get the effect going. So I'm going to use the one color ray generator. So I'm going to go down here to the little shortcuts pop-up and go to render and one color ray, and I get this kind of grayscale thing. Yuck, hate the colors. Okay, let's make it the nice orange colors that I'm looking for. Okay, so there's my funky background. I'm going to drag that down onto the timeline. Okay, so now's where it gets interesting. I'm going to go up and grab a piece of my newscaster here, and I've already set my ins and outs on this. So I'm going to drag this guy with an override edit down onto V2 above my color ray. And, of course, if I move the playhead into there, no key or anything yet. So here's where we add the color key. So effects, video filters bin, into the keying bin, and we're just going to use color key. Remember, we don't want to get fancy with this. We just want the basic color key. So I'm going to double click on that, filters menu, grab my eyedropper, pick a color, put the tolerance up. I don't want feathered edge, I want a nice hard edge, because remember, we're just trying to make a blob here. We're not trying to make it perfect, we're not trying to make it look great. We just want a basic blob. Okay, and maybe thin the edge just a little. Okay, so there we go. So now you can see we've got our guy in front of the color rays. Now here's the first part of the trick. You have to click the little invert box inside there. So we click invert, and suddenly you can see we've inverted it. We're seeing the green. That's okay. So the next part of the trick is over here in the matte bin. We need matte magic. So we drag a matte magic filter in there, and the shrink slider of that matte magic filter, crank it all the way up to its maximum of 5. And as you do that, watch what happens over there in the canvas. You should see the green sort of grows a little, it gets eaten outwards. I'm going to add another matte magic. I'd like it if those matte magic things let us go greater than 5, but they don't, so I'm going to add a couple of them. You can always add more matte magic filters or adjust the shrinkage values in here to make your border wider or narrower. I think that's good for now. The next step is to go into the channels filter and grab the invert filter and invert the alpha channel. So into the channel bin, and then we grab invert and we drag that over here and drop it in, and instead of RGB I want to invert the alpha channel, and voila, suddenly we see what is basically a dark outline of our newscaster. And here's where you can see why we didn't want to have a black background. For some reason, when this filter does its thing, we lose the picture of the newscaster. It just goes to black. If we'd had a black background, we'd have seen black on black, and we'd have thought, oh crap, it's not working. So the next step is we want to give this a color tint. Before we can tint it, we have to turn it white, because anything black tinted anything is still black. So I'm going to go into the image control bin and into the levels filter and drag the levels filter on there. And I'm going to crank the output to 100 and the output tolerance down to 0. And ta-da, we have a white color blob. So now, now we'll go to image control and tint. And I want to make mine yellow. So I'm going to click the little color thing there, go up to a nice bright yellow, click that, and hey, look at that, all of a sudden we've got a yellow background. So now I've got my border essentially made. It doesn't look much like a border, but that's because it's not bordering anything. Let's go back to our project bin here, and I'm going to drag another copy of the newscaster down onto the timeline with an overwrite edit. It's got the same in and out points as the previous one. And put the playhead back inside there. Okay, our guy's back. And this time I do want to use the Primat filter. So Primat RT, drag that on there. Double click that. And of course it guessed wrong here about what I wanted to key. So I'm just going to grab the eyedropper and click on the green. And hey, look at that. Not bad. Not bad at all. Doesn't look quite like my sample footage. That's because I added a 3-way color corrector onto this to make the newscaster look a little bit more yellow and cartoony like the background. So I'll go and do that. I've got that one up in my favorites bin. Color corrector 3-way. Drop that on there. Go back to the viewer. And I'll just drag those midtones over into the yellow area. Maybe the brighter stuff too. And I'll make him a little lighter. Okay, and there we go. Now as I look at this footage, I can see I've got a couple of little yellow dots like right there and right there. Those are little bits from the original key that are passing through. So I'm just going to go back to my clip-on V2, the one that is our color blob, and I'm going to open that up in the viewer. And I'm going to go to the tolerance setting and maybe lower the tolerance a little bit. Oh, better raise the tolerance. Keep going up a little, and you can see how the border changes a little. And I just keep changing it until the little extra things go away. And then I go a few further because I don't want them to show up after I render it. So the other thing that you'll probably notice about this footage, I've got some yellow lines here on the side. That happens very frequently with this sort of trick. The alpha channel ends at the edge, you eat in from it a little bit, and all of a sudden you've got some lines showing up. So the way to get rid of that is just to go to the motion tab, and we can crop in a little bit. And on the right as well. Okay. And there you go. That's how you put a border on keyed footage within Final Cut Pro. Once again, my name is Nathan Fullerton. You can check me out at www.nathanfullerton.com. If you have other questions or would like to see some other tutorials along these lines, please feel free to leave comments or questions in the comments section below. Have fun. Happy final cutting.